Today is a very special day. We are hosting another episode or another, I don't know what do we call these, Matt?
Hey, call it whatever you want.
We're going to call it a session on designing for digital embellishments. And the theme of this month, Matt, is something that I don't know how much you did in the past, but I sure as heck know you're doing a lot of today, is packaging and all the tips and tricks that come with designing for digital embellishment for packaging. And so, first off, before I jump in, Matt, how are you doing, buddy?
Doing great, Kevin. How about yourself? How's the weather down there?
Here in Florida, we have either hot or thermonuclear hot. And so we're in the process, as you remember well, of making that transition to the thermonuclear hot side of things. So, yeah, 90s.
Yeah,
I'm sure
I
you
don't
don't miss that.
I don't miss it at all. I just don't miss it.
Yeah, I'm sure. So Matt, tell me a little something. Back in your old position when you were running digital embellishment jobs, you were running them on a jet varnish 3DS.
Correct.
And from my understanding is that machine is a little bit limited in terms of the throat that you can do.
True.
You're really running like 14 inches through. So I don't know how much opportunity you had to run. Hey, Sabine, how are you?
Good morning. It took me a moment to get here. The link that I originally got me completely different.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. So we were just talking with Matt, and so Matt, you used to run 14-inch wide sheets for embellishments.
hmm
That format doesn't really lend itself to a whole heck of a lot of packaging. Did you run packaging before or not
I'm,
really?
I'm going to stop you right there because I think you're limiting your perspective on the 3DS. The 3DS technically is said to run 14 wide. It can also do 40.15 in length. That's 40 inches in length. And I have run 40-inch sheets through that machine. So, a smaller size press sheet, you cut it in half, you lay out your artwork, this half, that half, slice it in half, run each. I mean, it
I
works
mean,
beautifully.
you can, but let's just say somebody buys a 3DS, they're probably not aiming for packaging, right? They're probably gonna be
Mm,
doing like an Evo 52 or 75 to be able to run the B2 or B1 format.
that's correct. And it's not only that, it's the thicker, heavier sheet
Right.
because the 3DS just really doesn't do well with a heavier sheet.
So now you're running a Evo, what is that, 75 or 52?
Uh, all I
What's
know is it's a 3DL.
okay, so it's a 52. And so tell me, like now you're running a lot of packaging
Mhm,
in your new shop with our friends at Elite Print Finishing. So a little shout out
mhm.
to them. What's been the biggest thing that you've had to learn from a design perspective, going from mostly like commercial work to packaging work? Like, what are some of the things that you've picked up on now that you're running almost exclusively packaging?
Okay, so we've done packaging in the past on the 3DS. Smaller packages, boxes, uh, sheets that laminate to boxes.
Right.
So it's just parts of the box that would be laminated to the actual box. So there was some packaging done there, and it was done more in a manual sense.
Right.
Here, it's the big dogs. It's the big guns because not only do we have the jet varnish 3DL, which technically is 20 wide. We'll run 21 on it, but you just have to be careful. There's a whole bunch of machines back there that are like 2 stories tall that literally that do traditional hot stamping, foil stamping, eye cutting, perfing,
Right.
folding, everything. And so that's probably, and those machines are on 3,000, 4,000 sheets an hour.
Right.
So the 3DL is going to run 1,000 at best. So it's a whole different thing.
Right.
But people here are immersed in the world of packaging, the terminology, the technical expertise, uh, the
Sure.
history of it all, the future of it all. It's all right here. And it's fascinating for me to be jumping into that with this different perspective like, wow, these people have been doing this for 35 years.
Like the key things you're picking up on that you're seeing from I guess your learning curve.
Terminology,
Okay.
process,
Yeah.
equipment, and especially lately, quality control.
Okay.
QC is a huge issue in plant.
Yeah.
Even when it comes to design, you have to take these QC measures into your perspective of when you're designing a piece. That is it going to create problems for the people further down the line that have to evaluate this, whether it's working or is it not working?
Okay, really interesting. How about you? I know Sabine, you spend quite a bit of time also in packaging. I've watched a lot of your videos.
Yeah, but I want to hear from Matt. I want to hear from where he sees. Sorry, I interrupted you there, but I'm eager to hear where he sees the potential for the digital part, because he just said they have machines 2 stories high that do all the traditional parts. Where do you fit in? Where is your sweet spot? Where is, you know what I mean?
Sabine, the sweet spot shifts from
Okay.
customer to job to another customer.
Hmm.
And the salespeople and CSRs are always trying to convert the customer. Say, well, you've been doing this traditionally, maybe you'll get more notice if you use the raised tactile finish that we would get on the MGI. If it's a job that will lend itself to that, we'll do that. Some jobs are still sent out for screen on the Sakurai. So that's still a thing, and actually very much alive in this area. So there's that as well.
Yeah.
Which it still does offer that 3D tactile kind of a finish. If you screen enough varnish on there, you will get that. I don't know. I mean, it does shift right now. I'll show you here in a few minutes.
Well, you mainly do. Let's step back a sec if I can, because and
Sure.
this is probably the first 2 minutes. So you mainly doing folding cartons?
In any kind of box board, C flute, E flute, F flute, and
You're printing directly with the MGI. You're printing directly on the flute, on the
not on the MGI,
on the
but in the
board.
traditional machines in the back.
Right.
We will print the veneer or the sheet that gets laminated to
Right.
the
Got
flute, as would be the same thing with, say, a case-bound book cover.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll run like 100-pound text through the machine, get a good print, and then they'll laminate it onto the final product.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So,
I'll show you some of that process here in a minute as well.
so Matt, I have a big, massive question that I need you to dispel this myth. And it's a myth that I ran into on stage when giving a presentation a couple months back at Print UV, where somebody had bought multiple digital embellishment presses. All they did was packaging. And they said, here's my problem. So dispel this myth for me. Maybe it's wrong. He goes, I love my embellishment press. I did phenomenal work with it. The stuff that I was doing was so phenomenal that it got me lots of customers. And most importantly, it got me lots of customers who were getting, startups that were starting to do packaging. That's all they did. This company was a pure package play, right? That's all they did. He goes, the problem that they had was the following. He goes, the customers would love the boxes I did, but we were only doing 10,000 boxes for them. If they blew up and now suddenly an order came in for 100,000 or 500,000 boxes, the superb stuff that they were able to do on the short run on their MGI or their whatever,
this is not going to end well, people. Just stay tuned.
They weren't able to reproduce that on the longer run stuff. They weren't able to get the same amount of pizzazz or wow that they were getting on their embellishment press for the super long run. So they go, either I buy like 5 presses and I run those 24/7 and the customer pays for it, or I have to have that difficult conversation with the customer saying, as soon as you get over 10,000 pieces or 20,000 pieces or whatever that ROI looks like, we're going to shift to another process, which is running it on my Bobst in the back there. I can do some spot UV with screen. I can emboss that spot UV. I could do traditional foil stamping, but it's not going to be the same look and feel. Is this something that you've heard, Sabine, before? Or is this new to you?
No, this is why I'm saying this is not going to end well. This is, I think, one of the general problems, that you can do digital things, and this is where this is ideal for startups.
Right.
The whole digital embellishment part.
Right.
We know this. But at some point in time, you know, as you said, you either buy 5 machines and run them 24/7, which is,
Right.
you know, not very efficient, or you have to shift to traditional methods. And this is what digital originally was meant for shorter
Right.
runs.
Right.
So I think it's a great question. You know, you can do some things in traditional, but where is the, okay, now we can't do this anymore.
Right. So what are your thoughts on that, Matt? And first of all, is it a logical question I'm asking?
It's absolutely it's a real question.
I mean, all questions are amazing.
And it's based on real life experiences that I and others have had. For example, here's a story for you. I was prototyping on the 3DS, you know, which is probably the lowest of the low volume. I mean, it's a pretty fast machine for what it is. It's got 2 rows of print heads, but I mean, it's only 14.33 wide max. So you can only run so much through it at one time.
Right.
That prototyping job was gold foil and varnish on soft touch for a product that would sit on a bar at a bar for displaying the tablets that you take before drinking to prevent the hangover. And so it needed to be super sexy. It needed to be catch the light, you know, because the lighting is usually subdued in those areas. So we worked with different colors, different finishes on the soft touch. We worked on the foil, you know, got everything down exactly the way that marketing says this product will sell.
Right.
And then we ran a bunch of prototypes, did the prototype box stands that would sit on the bar and hold the product. Everything was beautiful. It was gorgeous. And they said, this is so awesome. Now we want 1 million of them. Yeah, 1 million. So now we're like, no, well, we can't help you with that. And it was a huge problem because now the customer was just left out in the cold and they didn't know what to do.
Right.
So first of all,
wait. For those of you following along at home and not familiar with this, why problem?
it was a problem because it would, think of it as like accumulating too much credit card debt and you're making the minimum payment. It's going to take you 12 years to pay off that payment. And by the time you pay it off, it will have cost you that much more to carry that.
I should ask differently. Absolutely right. Where is the hang up from the digital to the traditional? Where could the traditional not measure up, I guess is my question. Don't guess it. That's my question.
Let me
because you have traditional in-house, right? You said that. So
yes,
where was the this is what digital can do, but you cannot, and this is back to Kevin's question, but
okay, I'm going to come at this answer a little bit sideways, so bear with me. With digital foil,
right,
the digital process, there's a curve on what's effective, what's cost effective per piece.
Right.
Everything in manufacturing for this type of a product comes down to a per piece cost, always. That's the bottom line. That's what they look at. So on low run digital foil, it's cost effective. When you get up to like, you know, 5,000, 6,000 pieces, of course. Then once you get over a certain amount, now you're pushed against schedules, you're pushed against turnaround time, you're pushed against customer demand and turnover and response time. And then that brings your curve back down again. With traditional foil, those two curves are going to cross. One's going to go up and the other one's going to come down. And they're at some point, and they're going to meet in the middle, and they're going to be equal to each other. Like, well, you can do it this way or this way, and it's cost effective either way. But then once you get past a certain point, obviously the traditional method takes off and becomes the more cost effective method because they don't want to pay more than 11 cents per carton.
Right. So which part were you not able to replicate in the with traditional technology that you could do with a digital? Kevin, are we on the same page here? That's the main question, is it?
Well, you were talking more economics. So there's that economic break even where you talk about just cost of production. But I was thinking more of a design standpoint, and I was thinking more of like a look and feel standpoint. So being able to get that goop, as it were, to look goopy on the sheet, or to be able to track the light in a certain way. You know, screen printing, I think, can go up to 30 microns, which is, I think, the maximum thickness. could reverse emboss it. That's super technical. So like for me, it was really like it was more of a look and feel question from my standpoint.
Yeah. So what could you not do traditionally? What made the digital part superior to the traditional one?
It's just the way that
design.
it's the way that it reflects the light. You could emboss on a traditional method and raise that foil,
right?
But you don't. It's different. It just looks different. Sometimes it looks more refined. Sometimes it looks less refined, depending on the project and what the customer wants to look like. So I've actually had customers switch from digital back to traditional because they think it just looks a little too plastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks, but that's the look that almost all the customers here want. They want that plastic. Yeah, they want that punchy kind of ultra glossy, kind of that bubble effect, like a retro font would like have that kind of a rounded look to it. So that's what it's the look that they're going after. So we have clients here that batch through on regular basis. It's like as soon as we're finished with one aspect of the job, they'll send another batch through. So everything is paced. So that way they can keep the product looking the way that they want it to look with the raised digital foil and varnish, and yet not drive us like absolutely crazy with trying to fulfill the order. So that's kind of what it comes down to. It's the continuity and it's the speed that are the limits that you're up against.
Can I join for this one?
Hey,
yes,
Marco,
please.
what's up, buddy?
Hi.
Always.
Working around the house and listening to you guys. Regarding what you cannot do on a traditional, we did also on 52 on 9000L that you have now. We did the samples for the customer, special customer that is doing school books,
right?
For the children. So I did something 40 or 60 microns thickness, some animals, details of the animals and everything.
Right.
And this was the samples for their sales department to go out and sell those handbooks. And when they got to the printing, they do on a silk screen on the standard. They are really, really good with it. But on the back side, there was a little, let's say, giraffe, a little tiger and everything.
Marco, I think we lost you, buddy.
Varnish. We did all the details, the stripes on the giraffe and everything. They could not produce that in 3D in a standard classic way, because you need to, for those details, go to the nine fine silk, and then you cannot have the 3D effect on a fine silk.
That's right.
And this was, let's say, the complete difference between traditional and digital. And also what I want to mention is if you do for the boxes that you will cashier after on a F or a C cardboard, then what about if you do it on a traditional embossing? After the cashiering on it, you will lose the part of the embossing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It depends. They've actually been able to keep the embossing. We've recently done a job that did retain the embossing effect. It's reduced a little bit when it has to go through the rollers and it's stuck to that cardboard layer.
Excellent. If you can do it, excellent. But sometimes you need to press it harder, and then you lose the part of embossing. So this is also was my job for one potential customer, the braille letters. For the pharma boxes, you always have, at least in Europe, you have the braille letters to punch out on a specific machine. For the boxes, for the 1 liter boxes.
So you're doing stickers. That's super smart. I had not thought of that.
We did it. 132 microns.
Wow.
Of the braille letters.
So that's a great point. First of all, hey Hans, how are you?
Hey guys, I have actually a question on that, Marco. By the way, nice to see you here, Marco. How many passes are you doing that with?
It was 6 passes by 72 microns.
You retain that
Yeah.
at 72 microns. If you try to do it at 100 or 150 microns,
Just
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it blows
And
out.
so funny enough, like from a design
Yeah.
perspective, and we had experimented a lot of this with Matt because we had a customer who invented these braille tags for people who are blind. And I think we went into it thinking that, the first pass was going to be the base this big, and the second pass we're going to take like a couple pixel off, and then we're going to stack them like a pyramid. And what we found was when people were touching it, if we stacked big to small from a pass standpoint, the tip of that pyramid was too fine for people.
Okay.
So what we had to do was
Too sharp. Yeah.
we had to flip the pyramid. And that got us the optimal reading height. So we started off with the smallest one, and every pass we got a little bit bigger. And that was where we got the thickness that we were looking for, but the maximum amount of readability. So for anybody out there thinking about doing embellishments for Braille, flip the pyramid around to get maximum amount of a readability from people who are doing that stuff. So really,
Marco, is this what you did for your labels then, for the stickers?
No, I did it the same file 6 times.
So you
Okay.
just printed the same
Yeah,
on
I
top of
just
each other.
on top of each other, and it's a pharma, so the quality check on the pharma boxes are the most problematic. If it goes to the pharma quality check, then it will go through every
Yeah.
other check basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, and we did it next 5 years, 1 to 2 batches each year. And I did it firstly on same 3DS that you had with the 2 bars. And then
Wow.
later I did it. Yeah, this was 2 bars, basically 72 microns. This was my sweet spot for the quality and the speed.
Yeah.
And later I did it also on Evo and also on 3DL. So on all machines I did it, and it was every time was okay. But what I found out, the problem is the first batches I did it on a SRA3 format,
yeah.
transparent label, and then they cut it on a guillotine. And yeah,
No.
it was
No.
disaster. It was problem. Yes,
Ooh.
but on a third or a fourth batch, the particles the dots start to came off from the plastic because Fasson changed something in their label. So later I cut it with a flatbed cutter, but also the thickness was too high for the flatbed cutter. He removed, let's say, 1 layer from the dot.
Okay.
And in the end, we printed it like on a laser printer. We printed the marks for the flatbed cutter.
Yeah.
And we printed it the some template for the key points, Then we cut it on a flatbed cutter, and then we put it in the embellishment machine, in the jet varnish, and after that just peel off the matrix, and you then have the labels
Wow.
on each own on SRA3 sheets, because they were labeling it manually, so they can get it on a complete sheet or 1 by 1. It is the same. So in the end, we came to excellent quality and excellent everything.
That's insane,
Yeah.
Marco. Insane.
But kudos for the workaround.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, you need to think a little what is happening and
Always.
try to sort it out. Yeah.
Always, you got to figure this stuff out. So Matt, I know that you typically like to prepare some stuff before we jump. Did you prepare any slides for us? Any tips and tricks, or are we shooting from the hip on this one?
No, that's the last thing I did yesterday. So it's kind of usual. We have this lively discussion. We've already discussed most of it. It just comes up in the course of what's going on. But I also like to show some samples of what's possible.
Sure.
Kind of like design inspiration, because this is about designer stuff.
Always. Wow.
So I just want to make sure that Kevin and Sabine, that I sufficiently answered your question that you posed earlier. And I think Marco pretty much nailed it.
Not quite, I think, because in some ways, yes, but I think there's still.
Yeah, I agree. You didn't really answer it. You kind of did a good little tap dance around it, Matt. But like,
wait, I'm just
yes or no?
That tap dancing. Hold on.
Yeah. Like yes or no? Is it an issue or is it not an issue? And for Hans, who's just joined us, the issue is sometimes people fall in love with the stuff that you can do on a jet varnish from a visual standpoint. And it's great when you're doing 10,000 boxes, but when they ask you for the same look and feel on 500,000 boxes, is it or is it not possible to replicate using analog equipment where it makes more financial sense to run on that side? And that was really the question to Matt.
Yeah. And there really is no correct answer. As I mentioned, it's just that you either pace it and do everything in batches so that you can keep that same look and feel, or you have to make the change. You have to prepare. I mean, it's your responsibility to let the customer know that you're going to hit that point, that scalability point at some time.
Right.
And you have to make these concessions, you have to do this planning, or you have to just completely do something different. And it's not going to look like what you've got going on right now, but those are your choices.
Knowing that the customer ultimately wants to grow, and knowing that ultimately the goal is to get to this $1 million quantity mark, wouldn't it then be better to re-engineer this and say, okay, this is what we can do. We know we can do this on traditional, and
that's where I was getting to. Exactly.
Why wouldn't you re-engineer this then? Because you don't want a disappointed customer. The last 100%. Thing you want is, and you don't want them to cut them off at the knee and say, well, I'm sorry, we come to a point where we can't help you anymore.
Can you scale back all the wonderful things you could do with your jet varnish
and mimic
and make something that is more or less replicatable on a larger analog side from a design perspective, knowing the customer wants to drive up the volumes? Or do you just pull out all the stops and go bananas every time to hook the customer? And what does that conversation look like?
So hooking the customer is one element, but the other element is keeping the customer. Even if that means you need to recruit some of your competition to help fulfill their orders.
Right.
So the more machines you have running and more facilities, let's say we have a customer, they don't send all of that work to us.
Right.
They send a part of it to us. And then some of it goes to another finishing house. Some of it goes to another finishing house. It just all goes out, and then it all comes back to the same warehouse. So they're able to make their volume. They're able to get their numbers. It's just being done by all these different facilities.
Basically,
he's still tap dancing. Sorry.
Well, it's the workaround.
You need to prepare. You need to create the process and the box or whatever with the customer from the start. Ask him what is his plan, future, or what, how did they see it, maybe. Up front.
Well, that's
when
what
you're creating
Kevin
the
and
product.
I were going at, Marco.
Yeah. That's probably the thing. If you want to scale, don't design something that's only possible digitally. Design something that you can more or less replicate when going to an analog machine.
So here's the problem. We advise our customers of that. We say, hey, you've got a scalability issue here. Once you get past a certain point, or when you get another volume, you're going to have to use a different process. And they say they understand, but when you actually get to that point, now they're like, now they're all upset about it. So it really, you're probably right in the get-go that if you know it's going to scale to that point, you just need to go the direction that it needs to go in order to get there, rather than try to make a quick buck in one of your departments.
Right.
Yeah, you got to think long term.
But not everybody's going to do that.
Interesting.
No, and I totally see your client. They don't, if they're startup and they need like 5,000, 10,000 at the moment, $1 million is like this. It's way, way out in the future. We worry about it when we get there, and then they get there, and then they do nice impersonation, very impressive. I can see that. Yeah. But I think it's important to have the conversation and then be able to go back and say, we warned you.
Right.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, if the ROI is important, as you said, you got to keep it to a certain cost per piece. And if you can't do that, then they might go somewhere overseas to get something completely different done, and you don't want that either.
Right. I know, but then they've got shipping involved in that too, which might make it less cost effective.
And they got tariffs now.
Now they got tariffs.
Yeah.
So Matt, show us what you prepared, because I know from a designer perspective, I think a lot of people want to know what's the best way to design for packaging, and are there any
That gets younger by the minute in your images. What can I say?
What can I tell you? I mean, is that filling your full screen?
Yeah, close enough.
No, it's good. Yeah, we're good.
Okay, all right. I don't want to have you looking at yourself or anything like that here. So anyway, I was really looking at this kind of from a 101 perspective for any designers trying to get into this media. And the thing that I'm finding is that a lot of designers are designing things, and then when they're asked to do a box with a die line, comparing it to vinyls, they have to go through this whole system of packaging, the world of packaging. They are clueless. And that's not to say that they're stupid. It just means that they have a lot of designers are just not exposed to that. They may know web design, they may know UX, UI, they may know how to build an app, they may know how to use all the design programs, they may know how to illustrate. But then when it comes to taking all those things and putting them on a box, that's a whole different world. Right. So what I wanted to cover was, setting up the scene. We want to talk about the surfaces that you're going to be using, some of the problems you might be running into and how to overcome them, or at least what to expect as far as a problem further down the road, and then some samples for us to look at for possible, just eye candy. So packaging is typically measured in points for thickness. So it's like a tag stock. It's really heavy. It's like a paperboard. Unless you're doing a laminate, then you're going to use the thinnest possible stock, which always creates a problem on these machines because they're not made to run that. Okay. If you ever try to run an 80-pound text through these machines, you just go pull out your hair in advance because you're going to end up that it's very, very frustrating. And it's like you have to set the belt speeds to be completely synchronized, or else
because you got this big blob of varnish on like a super thin sheet, and it kind of almost distends the paper in a way because that paper wasn't meant to carry all that varnish.
Yeah. So you've got the weight limit of the varnish, the tensile strength of the paper is pulling against that. It can shrink on the sheet and pull it in. Yeah. But if you laminate that sheet to the base soon enough, then you're pretty much in the clear. But you need a really good glue and a really careful method of doing that. Right. So typically what we run here is an 18 point.
Okay.
And that's pretty dense. And on top of that, it's going to be laminated. And on top of that, it could be a heavy laminate on both sides. So the side that we're embellishing could be matte finish laminate. It's a plastic poly overcoat that's applied with heat and pressure. And then the back side might be 100% gloss, like mirror finish. Right. And then that's actually going to turn into a book cover. And that stuff, if you get the corner of that sheet against your skin, it will cut you. That's how dense this thing is and how sharp those corners are by the time they're cut down. So we do run some 12 point, we do run some 16 point, but generally for paperboard boxes that you would see on any shelf in any store, it's going to be like an 18 point. For the sake of comparison, I'm sorry, what?
No, for our European friends, that's going to be around 400 GSM. So I know Marco and Hans are like,
thank you.
Speak my language here. What's going on? So
yeah. And just for reference, a typical credit card is 30 points. So that's still fairly thick paper. We talked about corrugated earlier that doesn't run through these machines. It's too thick. You've got, these just show the typical 3-layer flutes, but we will run a sheet that laminates on top of these. Right. And it's beautiful. It's actually, you see it on the shelf sometimes, it's everywhere. You just don't realize that it's a thinner sheet of paper that's been laminated to typically an E flute or an F flute. Most product boxes that you see on the shelf are going to be an F flute. They're going to be this small.
And I don't want to give anything away here with what you're running confidentially, but is there a typical market for these different type of flutes that you see? Like like cosmetics typically run B flute and cannabis F flute, and
so cosmetics typically don't get layered onto this type of a substrate. That's usually more of a paperboard stock, usually lighter, like 12 point roughly. They'll go 12 to 14 point on those. But what you're going to see this what we call cardboard substrate used for is if it goes into a display box that sits on a counter. Usually they're the ones that break down, pop up, and turn into a display. So the lid folds up, and then there's a little tab that pops up, and then the tail tucks in. You've seen them everywhere. Sure. And so those are typically going to be like an F flute, or a heavy 18 point. But usually a product box isn't going to use this type of a substrate, a cardboard substrate, unless it's like a television, something that needs a lot of durability, you know, an appliance. If you buy an air fryer, right, it's probably going to be in an E flute or F flute, with a laminate over the top.
You sound like you just bought an air fryer.
I recently did. I know you and I went around and I'm like, I don't have the counter space, and I never did, and I still don't. But it's huge. Cuisinart, it's huge. It's like 12 by 12.
Right.
You could put a whole chicken in that thing if you wanted to. It bakes, it roasts, it air fries, it does all kinds of stuff. I love it. Thank you, Kevin, for pushing me all these years to pull the trigger and get. I turned the corner, it was on clearance for half price. I couldn't resist.
There you go.
Yeah. So we're talking about packaging, but I also want to talk about books or binding for books. And I know, Sabine, this is your area of expertise, but I consider that to be a package. The binding for any book is a packaged set of pages, and they're all bound together so that it can be used as one thing, as one item of reference. So we do a lot of what we just discussed about covers, whether it's a saddle stitch where everything's stapled together on the right. We do a lot of covers on the thinner stock that for a perfect bound, that's 12 to 14 point with a laminate. And we also do laminate sheets for case bound. And that's something that you have to be really careful with as far as the depth of the varnish used, and that it's really, really durable. So for that point, based on that point, I always recommend that you just embellish on either the front or back cover and not the inside front and the inside back covers. That tends to cause some issues. I've seen some people do it, but they generally do it for like an annual report that's going to be read and thrown away, not for something that's meant to sit on a shelf for a long, long, long period of time. Depending on the type of paper that you use and the type of binding that you use, that varnish can shrink up and pull in on those paper fibers over time. And if you put that on both sides, now they're competing against each other for pulling on those paper fibers.
You get warping?
You get warping, and you can actually get what appears to be a reverse embossed effect that shows through to the other side. Yeah. And the reason that happens, especially, is if you're using foil, not so much if you're just using varnish, but if you're putting foil on top, you're running one side through under that hot, heavy, high pressure foil roller, and then you're flipping the sheet over and running the other side through on that same type of pressure. It does tend to deboss the other side just a little bit if your pressure is high to get that foil.
So even on coated paper.
Even on coated paper. So the thicker the paper, the better.
So just the pressure of the roller that's pushed. Same thing we see with guillotines, right? People who are trying to cut high build varnish with guillotines, sometimes that pushes through as well.
Yeah,
it's physics.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a pressure issue. Yeah. So sorry, Marco.
Finish. Then I will ask.
No, go ahead right now.
What on a metric scale, on a European scale, what is the thickness of the paper that you use for the hardcover books that you will glue the cardboard onto and finish for the cover?
Okay, so I don't know what the GSM.
150 gram, 135 gram. Because in Europe, at least in Croatia, Serbia,
I'd think probably 130.
It's something like this. Yeah,
probably 135.
From 115 to 150. I know that book producers use from 115 to mostly 135, 150. And with lamination, of course.
I don't know if this is a topic for future discussion as well, is points versus pounds versus grams per square inch. They're all different methods for
Every
measuring,
time.
but
Test them every time. Yeah.
certain types you need to measure one way, certain types of paper you need to measure another way, because not only is it the weight of the paper, it's how the paper bends, it's the thickness or density of the paper, and that all adds into the weight, which is grams per square meter, but that doesn't really translate to how thick it is.
Mhm.
So it's almost like you need all three, but when you're dealing with on the American side anyway, when you're dealing with packaging materials, everything's in points. I'll bring up other measurements in meetings and everyone's like, okay, how many points is that? And I'm like, oh, okay, well, let me talk in your language now. So I'm like, I don't know. The machine says 400 GSM. Well, how many points is that? So it comes down to the density of the paper weighs into all that, as well as the size of the sheet and the thickness of the sheet. And it's very, very confusing. You can't have a solid conversion chart that this is this and this is this. You can approximate it based on the type of paper that it is. Is it text? Is it cover? Is it tag? So for those three categories alone, you're going to have different scales to convert to, whether it's certain such and such pound or certain GSM. It's always a frustrating thing. So surfaces, packaging require, we always want it to be durable. It's going to be handled, it's going to be shipped. The boxes are going to be packed inside of other boxes. They're going to scrape together. People are going to pick it up and set it down, pick it up, set it down, pick it up, set it down. You're going to throw it in your shopping bag. You're going to take it home. It's going to sit on your shelf or it's going to sit on your counter. It has to be durable. So we always embellish over either a polylaminate or an aqueous coating. There needs to be some kind of coating for durability. And especially if you've ever seen any press sheet for the packaging industry, there's a tack panel, a glue panel. That's also laid on there using a press. It's like a spot coat that it feels like a sanded area where the glue is really going to stick.
Right.
So they may do an aqueous coat, but then they have to come back and do a glue panel so that it's not too smooth of a surface for that glue to stick to. You can also, and one job that I currently have on the press is to apply spot varnish over the spot foil. To prevent scratching. So you just, where you lay down the varnish with the foil, you put another layer of varnish on top of that, and that gives it that kind of a scratch-proof overcoat.
Doesn't that take away from the shininess of the foil?
It actually adds to it, Sabine.
Oh, really?
It gives it another dimension, makes it even more like.
So you're applying a spot gloss varnish.
Yeah, I'm applying the gloss varnish over the foil, and it builds up another layer, and if you put enough of it on there, it just has this additional wow effect that I can't. It's almost like a lens, like some kind of lens was applied to it, and it throws the light in a more interesting way. I think the only thing that you have to watch is that certain manufacturers of the holographic, or what they call laser foil, if it has to pardon?
The laser safe foil, the overprintable you're talking about. I keep going, I'm sorry. Make them so that you could run them through like a toner press and the electrophotography won't throw off.
Yeah, there is that, but we've never had an application for that.
Okay.
So just from the perspective of durability, just putting that additional coat of varnish over the foil creates more of a lensing effect. It tends to brighten the foil. The only thing is, if you put it on top of a holographic foil that does not have a high refractive index to it, then it tends to undo that refractive index, and it just makes that holographic foil just look like silver or plain gold. It kind of erases the holographic effect from that foil. I've seen that happen before. Let's see. Well, there's going to be problems. So the thing is, in packaging, you don't know what the problems are until they happen. That's the thing. I know at the last place I worked, Blue Ocean Press, one thing that they did do right.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Oh, hey.
Good. You got a second?
Oh, who joined us?
So on Monday, we have the Darlene.
I think Ken's.
So I'm gonna see them on Thursday to go.
I'm just gonna mute Ken. I think he didn't realize he was his mic was open. It's Ken from I think Team Concepts in Chicago.
Oh, okay. So one thing that they did at Blue Ocean was very, very, very smart, because it was low volume, because it was 100% digital from the printing all the way through to the finishing and cutting. It was all digital. Everything was a digital die line, a digital file, and it was all in one PDF. It just needed to go here, there, and everything was handled. We'd do a test run on any significant job, or a job that had to be absolutely perfectly right, or we needed to have a proof of concept that it was going to work on that stock and produce a live proof for the customer for approval. Then we'd take that job through the entire process from beginning to end and hand them a physical sample, cut, folded, glued, whatever it needed to have done. And so you just make a prototype, you make a test run prototype, and then you know exactly what you're getting into. And then when you run into those problems, you know what you're going to have to do to overcome them before you're in the production cycle. So this requires that if you do outsourcing, if someone else is doing your die cutting, if someone else is doing your bindery, then you have to consult with those downstream vendors for specs and methods. They have to know what you're doing and what your intention is for doing it. And that might be on the responsibility of either the project manager, and if the designer is the project manager, then it's the responsibility of the designer. So if you're designing this piece and it just totally crashes at some point in the production cycle, well, if you've done a test run, then that wouldn't happen. And if you would have consulted with those people, then that probably wouldn't have happened either. So here we have to make sure that we follow the vinyls and die lines so that we can allow for breaks and coverage. And I'll show you some examples of that in a moment, because boxes have to die stamp, they have to fold, they go through these machines that go shoop, 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 and a flat sheet goes in and a box comes out the other end. So it's quite fascinating to see how they have to set that up. And then once it's set up, they all just stand there and watch the machine run. So we, on our end, when it comes to laying down where that foil and varnish goes, we have to take the vinyl and lay it down on top of the sheet, which shows where all the die lines, folds, cuts, scores, everything is, and make sure that you have cuts in the foil or varnish where it has to bend so that you don't crack those design elements. That's very, very important, because we can't always do a test run here because it's large volume. To set up the die on a machine requires downtime. And then the machine has to sit there while you produce it, and then they have to load it and then run it. So that means someone's sitting around for an hour or two waiting for something to happen with nothing to do. And that's just not cost effective. So we rely very heavily on those vinyls to make sure that by the time it gets to those machines for whatever processing needs to happen to them, that it'll go through seamlessly. And last but not least, test, and then test it again, and then look at it again, get a third pair of eyes to look at it, and then test it again. Get someone to sign off on it, send samples to the customer, make sure they send back a yes or a no. Screenshot that, stick that in your file, and you're good to go. So if you're not familiar with vinyls, they're basically like a blueprint, a die line on a translucent or clear sheet that shows, you can actually read this, it's upside down. It says print side up, excuse me, where you know that you've got the sheet the right side up. And then it usually shows you the gripper and guide. You lay it on top of your sheet that you've printed and make sure everything lines up. Do you need to move this a little bit, move that a little bit? Did this stretch? Did this shrink? So these vinyls are very, very important. It's kind of, I don't know, the proof of the proof that we use here for what has to happen downstream. Just for curiosity, this is our MGI room, or at least half of it. So it's a monster of a machine. Right now we're buried, absolutely buried in work. This, what you see right here, is a third of the job. It's 120.
That's a third of the job?
That's a third of the job. And so then we've got, I think, 6 more jobs waiting. And then we have to stop this job, I think, twice in order to do other testing on upcoming projects that they need proofs on. And then we have to load these jobs back on and continue running. So this is all MGI work here. It just, we have pallets stacked chest high, shrink wrapped and banded. We have to haul those into the room and then just get busy. But this is what we end up with. This particular one I love because it was done on that holographic foil board. So that that adds such a distinctive element to it. It was traditionally embossed, and then it was run through the MGI for the clear varnish overlay. So it's just a fun little wrap that goes around.
So
It's
the
like a box.
embossing was done with a normal emboss,
Yes,
not with the
that's
API.
that's a traditional multi-level emboss. Yeah, that way they could get that type of effect. You could probably do
I
that
have a,
with the
I,
varnish. Yep.
okay, I have a question. Do you remove, when you were saying, talking about the vinyl, do you remove the varnish from the cut line or the crease line, or you just lower it? What is your workflow regarding this?
Marco, that depends on the piece. So on some jobs, I'll just put on the artwork, I'll actually put like,
Matt, did you move your
Matt, you
mic?
got to put your mic back down.
sorry, I was coughing. I put it up. Thank
Yeah.
you. I always forget that. It depends on the job, Marco, because it depends on how visible that is going to be. Like if it's missing and if it's a wide gap to clear like a stress score or a corner bend or something, then I'll reduce it unless it's foil. If it's only varnish, yeah, I might reduce it. I'll draw a thin line. I'll apply white to it. I'll put it in place and I'll reduce that white to say 10 to 15%. And so with that transparency applied, it reduces that 100% varnish to, you know, just 10 or 15% of what should be there. And that usually does the trick if it's in a very visible, conspicuous space. If it's like an obvious corner or some place where it's not going to show that much, I'll do a hard cutout. And people kind of expect that. The eye fills it in. They don't think it's like anything odd. But there again, if it's really conspicuous and it's going to really hurt the design, then I'll remove just some of the varnish and just leave a haze so that there's a little bit of a shine there, but it's enough varnish to crack when it rounds that corner. So here's another view of this one. We do the presidential Hershey's Kisses boxes. This was Biden's box. So we do the windowing. This just gets the gold foil. This is just gold foil on the MGI. Simple little project. We didn't do this one. H&M did it as a sample piece, and I just wanted to show the depth of what a traditional method can do. I think in this call we know what digital foil can do, but I just wanted to show this because it just blows my mind. So this is a traditional die stamp on like one of the giant 2-story machines we have out back, along with the traditional emboss with foil applied in, you know, particular places on that emboss. And I just absolutely love, I just put this in here as design inspiration.
Yeah.
This is the box that opens with a triangle lid?
Yes.
Oh,
beautiful. Yeah, I love it. So there's a design that's revealed underneath here that shows halfway through the diagonal. So it continues underneath when you lift that box. And this could be done digitally, but it would definitely have a slightly different look to it. It wouldn't have that smooth look, of course, because you need a certain amount of varnish there before the foil begins to stick to it.
Yep.
We've run test sheets where we've gone down to three microns of varnish, and it's still gorgeous. The customer wanted a flat varnish look. And so let's say that if that green was printed, then we could come back and put 3 microns of clear varnish using the MGI over that and try and replicate that effect. It wouldn't be as shimmery, but I think it would be as equally as impressive. So I just absolutely love this piece. But that's I mean, to me, I don't know, it's like when vinyl became perfected in like 1986 for getting a record on vinyl. It was like almost absolutely perfect, just in time for it to go out to let CDs in. I think that's the state of traditional embossing and foiling. It's at that point. It's just been perfected because it's been used so much. And this is what you're able to get out of it.
And
Here,
Superior, the guys who ran that, actually have an MGI, I believe, as well.
yeah. It's funny that a lot of shops have
Yeah.
both types depending on the output that they want to present to their client. Marco, you asked about the break in the foil. So look at the edge of this box. We just did these. It's not your son's weed. And hence the peace signs and hearts and the little smoking, joints on there.
For European friends, just so you know, like cannabis is legal here, and it's a big market for digital embellishments.
That's almost all we do.
Yeah, big market.
Almost all we do. So because this corner bends outward, it would stretch that foil. And rather than take a chance on it breaking or cracking or looking, sometimes it just looks stressed.
How wide is the gap?
I actually don't know. And that's something that is, to use an unprofessional word, finagled with on the machine.
That's a very technical term, Matt.
It's finagled with on the machine, and we literally cut those out in the mask using the editor on the machine after viewing it with the die line vinyls. We're like, oh, we needed a little more. Oh, we needed a little more. Oh, we needed a little more over this way. So it's a real world adjustment. If you can try, Sabine, you can try to do this in your design when you're setting up the file, and it will always be wrong. I don't know why.
No, this is why I'm glad you're doing it, because I mean, if you now tell designers, oh my God, you have to have a line off that, if there's any kind of movement, you're stuck.
Yeah, or if the paper, the paper stretches or shrinks, now you have a different adjustment. So this was the step.
I always did it like you on the machine, because designer cannot guess it. Cannot guess it, don't know what is happening, as you said.
Yeah,
I always on a training, I always tell to the operators, do it yourself. Cut it out if you need to cut it out, because you see live preview what is happening, what you said.
Yeah, it's real world. And additionally, if the designer thinks that they can do it and they think they did it right and it's wrong, now it's really hard to go back and fix it. So this was the 3 boxes we did for the company, and I don't know if you can see, it shows up mostly on Blueberry Crumble there in the distance. There's like a diagonal line that goes from the back to the front, from the top to the center front, where we have those little breakaway perfs. Like the whole top of that box will lift off and tear away to be displayed on a counter, and then it's like this little holder. And so we also have to do a breakaway at that perf line. So there's a lot going on when you're dealing with packaging design. So, and you have to clear the score lines here. That's where it pulls back to reveal. If you want to just pull the top back, like as if you're flipping open a pack of cigarettes, then you've got that little score line there. And then of course, that's just showing the bottom view of the box where they pretty much got it right. It looks pretty good. We also do foil and varnish. They do these tiny little leaves on the box, which is a total pain in the butt. But here's a sample of a box that pops up. It's a pop-up display. We do a lot of these here, and this is going to be 16 or 18 point. Very, very cool projects that we do. And of course, you see the horizontal perf line there where the top does a breakaway for displaying it on a counter. And so then the product will all stand up in there, and it'll be sitting there.
What foil is that, Matt?
Pardon?
This is not your regular gold foil. What is it?
That particular job, I am not exactly sure. We run several different gold foils here. And a lot of times they just have to be labeled correctly, because even to my eye, I can't see the difference between them. The experienced foil people, the CSRs up in the front office here, can look at it and say, oh, that's the 75 and that's the 73. And to me, they look like the same foil, but they're actually...
Well, like we're designers. We see 50 shades of white. We see 50 shades of gold.
That's true. But for me, when it comes to foil, I can't discern because of the shininess.
No. I was just curious, because this doesn't look like your regular foil. Oh yeah, seen this.
Yeah, so this is showing, you can see the breakaway points where the fold lines are going to be on this press sheet. This was a little half business card box that I did for Kevin, for his son Aaron at one point. And so I just didn't want to bend that varnish at those corners. If the varnish is on the inside, then feel free to just leave it there. Don't bother knocking it out, because it's going to compress inward at that bend, and it's just going to crinkle up in a place where you can't see it anyway. It doesn't cause any problems. But if it's on the outside, it could crack and show the white paper. Oh, you do have it.
Of course I have it. These things came out awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you put it on a 14 microns, it will survive.
Probably,
The
yeah.
thickness 12 to 14, even on a 3DL, because it's 3 microns per drop, you can go to 9, even 6, and just to leave the shininess and not to be the, let's say, matte finish, or because of the lamination or whatever.
So that particular box that you're looking at right there was done on the 3DS, and it did not do well with screens of the varnish. So if I had a 10% or 15% area of varnish, then it wouldn't print anything at all. Its cutoff was 30. So if it was below 30, nothing printed. So I might be laying down 56 microns of varnish, and then I'd put 30% area of knockout for, you know, like a crease or that, then no varnish would print there at all.
Yeah, but you
So-
need to check. You have the, inside the GVTI, you have the check, it's the letter, lettering, yeah.
Mhm.
And then you should get out almost even the, especially on the big ones, even 2% you can get out.
Yeah, and that's what everyone says to do, but it did not work on that machine. It did not look good. It looked really rough. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I never did it on that machine. On this machine here, the 3DL, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I know.
So they're different heads, it's different varnish, it seems to work so much better. So
Mostly the different varnish, because of the different varnish, not so
Yeah.
much because of the heads.
so I'm gonna buzz
Because the
through this
Evo,
one.
okay, talk.
I'm gonna buzz through this one really quick because we're actually over time. This was a foil and varnish. So of course gold foil, and done blind, completely blind. And I thought that was a fun little piece. That is also a pop-up box that sits on a counter to display. But I thought that was a fun little piece to show. And that's it. That's all I have.
I think we need to let Matt start first next time, because otherwise we always run out of time.
Well, listen, guys.
It's so much fun to show and tell.
Yes, Matt, I can't thank you enough for hosting this session of the Digital Embellishment meetup for designers. I wanted to give a big shout out to our sponsors, MGI Digital Technology, Paper Specs, and the Digital Embellishment Alliance. This has been super, super helpful. Matt, Sabine, Hans, Marco, thank you so much for being a part of this. And we look forward to next month, where we're going to be focusing on a specific topic, which is going to be it's going to be around commercial work. So we're going to be really diving into the types of commercial work that is going on out there, whether it's business cards, brochures, all that good stuff. We're jumping into the world of commercial printing for next month's setup. Everybody, thank you again for your time. This is going to be up on the JetForce, as well as being posted on the internet soon. We look forward to seeing you guys next month, and thanks again for being here, everybody.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Thank you, bye.
Bye,
Yeah.
guys.
Thanks a lot. Very inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you, Hans.